Now, as with OSPF and BGP, you want to be able to have a whole planning methodology regarding your use of this particular protocol. Some of this will be repetition, but the principles are very much still applicable. General design principles to follow, create a high-level design, you want to have a pilot or proof of concept testing, and then have a review and verification process of your design work. So whenever you're going to design a network, no matter what protocol you use, no matter what setting, no matter what service provider, you always want to start with requirements. Know your expectations. Don't assume them. Always make sure you know what they are. Be able to actually clearly articulate in a number of fairly well-phrased sentences what the expected outcomes are. Is it we want internet connectivity throughout the enterprise? Is it we want to be able to connect to this particular internet service provider? From a BGP standpoint, what is the outcome? Gather all of the facts. Make sure that you interview or talk to enough people, we call them stakeholders, to make sure that you understand what all the facts are involved, the number of sites and other things. Perform a physical site inspection so that there are no surprises. If a facility that you've never been to, it's even more important to do a physical inspection, as there are all sorts of surprises that can await you that you can avoid when you actually go to do the installation, test, and turn up. Account for power, cabling, and device placement. Make sure that you have network drops of the sufficient number. If it's a particular communications closet, that the what's called the demarc has been put there or extended to there. That's very important because some service providers will not do what's called an extended demarc. Know the availability of your WAN circuits, how long it will be. 30 to 45 days used to be for a T1 and could be upwards of 90 to 120 for DS3 and above. Make sure you know what that availability is. And then also account for any devices that you're going to have to support in this new environment. Document all your assumptions, financial assumptions, who's responsible for what, whatever the expected timeline is for design implementation and testing, whatever other organizations are involved. Otherwise, you want to avoid to be able to have the finger pointing if something gets confused. Ask all questions, make sure that you confirm those, and get everything in writing. And if people get nervous about that, just stress the importance of having a paper trail. Develop your contingency plans and develop and stick to whatever a mutually agreed on project plan is a part of this. Make sure it's realistic as well. Make sure you have a high-level design, site locations, equipment, VLAN, LAN IP addressing, WAN links. If you're using autonomous systems at different sites, depending on what your end goal is. Develop a BOM or a bill of materials, equipment, lead times. Make sure you always have SmartNet maintenance. And then also whatever logistics of your staging are. Are you going to have them at your central office and then send them to remote sites? Or is it going to be just shipped there and you will have someone work with it remotely and so forth? Make sure you have a very coherent IP addressing plan and that it's documented. Make sure you use consistent addressing, consistent masks, and just things of that nature. For instance, a /30 for serial links, a /24 for offices, and so forth. Reserve whatever ranges you may have for different purposes. For instance, I would usually recommend when a customer was putting in an MPLS network to use a really high address range like 10.254.254 because it'd be so unusual, it'd be very obvious in a routing table. Summarize what you can, track usage and decommissioning of addresses within the pool, and then take that high-level plan and turn it into detailed plans after you get the appropriate approvals. If necessary, do a pilot or proof of concept. If you're using a new technology, you're putting in new types of devices, if you're being acquired or are doing the acquiring of another company, that you have the ability to be able to deal with that. If you're changing the protocol, for instance, you're going from static to BGP, and if your processes are being different. The example I've used here is if you've used analog-based payment card systems at various locations and then you're going to move to network-based payment card systems, that's a huge impact. You want to be able to estimate anything you can in terms of how to properly and efficiently implement that. Understand that in a pilot or proof of concept, you need to know what your testing environment is going to be. It should be, from a scope standpoint, a subset of the number and types of sites that you'll have involved. For instance, if you have some sites that have 50 people and some sites that have 20 people and some sites that have 5 people, those are 3 different site types you can use. You don't have to replicate everything, just the basically representative of the sites. Have the devices you're going to use. The staging of it should be essentially a lab miniature version of the larger network. But you know what your testing plan is, what the outcomes will be, and then how it will be reported, and how your lessons learned will be implemented in the larger project. It's important to have a verification and review process for anything that you do. So make certain that you have people that you trust to help you be able to smooth out the rough edges of your plan. You have peers, those that you know, maybe even in your department, experts, those, it may, for instance, if you have a Cisco partner that provides network and services and equipment, that would be a person or a group of people to be able to depend on. Cisco itself, those are the kinds of experts you want to be able to bring in. Ask your critics. Now make sure they're viable. If it's just someone that would tell you something mean just to hurt your feelings, they're not the kind of critics I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people who will be straight with you, that won't always spare your feelings, but you tell you what you need to hear. Obviously, you want to make sure your superiors, those that to whom you report, have an input, and then also other reviewers as needed.